It's recording. Welcome, everyone. Today is the 18th of November, 2021. As per usual, the CNCF Code of Conduct applies. Anyone who watches this on YouTube and would like to participate in one of those calls, they're open. Everyone is encouraged and more than welcome to join. As per usual, feel free to switch your camera off if you don't want to be recorded, or to write if you don't want to be if you don't want your voice to be heard. But feel free to speak up at any time, except for if we have a call for consensus at that point in time. Please only let Prometheus team members say, shows thumbs up, thumbs down. But outside of every single team member is highly encouraged to participate and raise their voice at whichever time about whatever topic we are currently discussing. Also, if you want to bring in your own topics, we have a backlog mechanism where you can just suggest stuff and we put it on the backlog and go through stuff. So let's get started. Björn is first with Query Planner for PyramQL.
Yeah, I mean, I closely suspect this is another topic where we kind of will all agree that this needs a design doc, and then we will do it. But still, there might be interesting insights here. So what does that mean? That might mean many things. I'm actually not an expert myself in how query planners work, so I might use the wrong terminology. But I mean, Julius is not here, right? He might probably tell us a lot about this. Currently, PromQL just evaluates the whole tree, no matter what. And often, even as a human, you can see, okay, if this left branch has the result X, I already know I don't have to look at that right branch at all because nothing can ever match. But still, PromQL engine will happily evaluate every single node in this tree and will, even if it touches millions of zeros. So the idea is that, make the engine a bit more smart. And that is what I understand as query planning, that you do branch elimination and all those things, or you might even rearrange a query in a way that the result is the same, but it's faster to calculate all those things. I think that will require, or many of those features will require, some of those features will be trivial, right? We could optimize that right now. Although we had a discussion that because broken remote read implementation might give you a different result, we shouldn't do it. But I don't know. I think we should do it where if you have a ratio and you already know that only certain things in the denominator can match the, what is the other thing, enumerator, then you can already leave it out, right? That's probably already possible now. But sometimes I think we need a structure where some branches need to be evaluated before you even look at the other branches. And that is different from what we do it now. But I also think it will help us, and that's the second paragraph here, this whole idea that durations and timestamps could come, for example, from another time series. That isn't possible right now, because right now we require the engine to know exactly at which times to look to evaluate the expression before starting to evaluate the expression, which of course wouldn't work if you have a range length that is coming from another evaluation, which also needs stepwise evaluation. So I think this is a super big topic. Query planning needs careful planning. But I think we should put it on our agenda. I also heard from Thanos people and Cortex people. They have a lot of interest in this, although sometimes this is not completely overlapping. Sometimes it's query planning that is only happening if you do query sharding in Cortex or something. So, but I think there could be cross-pollination. And I've not the expertise to now start a huge initiative, but I think it would be great at least to have a line in our design doc page, another to-do line, and so we can point people who might be qualified to that line, and they could start working on it. But if you have any thoughts about this is why I brought it up here in the Dev Summit. There might be concerns or ideas or initiatives already that we are not aware of. That would be a great moment to talk about. So that's my pitch.
Thank you, Bjorn. I would like to talk about the fact that some remote read implementation can return queries with different labels at what was asked. And I think that remote read is still experimental. I think if we decide that we can break it because it's experimental, that remote read implementation must return the labels, must follow the matchers that we give them and return only the expected labels in return, we can have a lot of gains in PromQL now. And I would like to see if we can have a consensus to change the remote read, well, to add to the remote read that requirement that the remote read must behave like a TSDB would a PF. So if you ask for a label foo, you get only the metrics with label foo in return, because that would just be for 99.9% of Prometheus users now be a game changer for a lot of queries. The claim from, I think it was Brian, that we do not, that currently we do not enforce that. I think that we should just remove that because it's a remote read has always been experimental, right? So as part of that freedom that the experimental provides us, I think we should think for the 99.9 users and enforce that in the remote read protocol.
I don't have a problem changing that. Like it's a edge case that is, I think some people kind of taking it, that some people use, but I don't think is defined behavior. Like I don't think it was intentional. To my knowledge, maybe it was. So I don't have a problem changing that, and especially if we can get gains for a majority of users.
Yeah, I mean, I understood the debate back then that we had like fun remote read implementations where you could query MySQL with PromQL and stuff like that. But that, yeah, wasn't really intended to change the semantics of PromQL results or something. I felt back then the what is it, the expression, we whacked the dog or something if we kept ourselves from query optimization by some weird remote read implementations.
And for the query planner, I think that we need to decide if we still want to have isolation at all costs. So having one selection for everything that we would do or not, and then we can go with a design doc. But I think we need to think about isolation. What do we want for isolation? Do we want isolation for each part of the query, or to be able to have one querier that would have the same view on the TSDB for all the selects that it would do?
I mean, it would be ideal, I guess, but I would leave that to the design doc to make the trade-off, right? I mean, or to phrase it the other way around, would if like perfect isolation turns out to be too expensive for that, would we then not have a query planner, right? That, yeah, but that's even that could be a decision in the design doc, right?
Okay.
But like also the issue I linked in the beginning, right? This is where somebody actually suggested to have an operator to control essentially the flow until this is only evaluated after a certain condition is met. And that would be really weird, right? It would make the language really bizarre if you had this. It would be so much better if this is implicit and people don't even have to thought about it. Yeah, and it would, of course, be great if people who actually are experts in writing query planners would get involved.
Okay, so I would like to add that the community, from Cortex and Thanos sides has a strong need for query planner, and will definitely develop one for sure, because there are so naive wasted computation that really matters on the scale, right? But it was always very hard to bring something from this world to Prometheus because of this limitation of like, hey, remote read has this quirky interface, but looks like we are kind of happy with making sure interfaces is very small and like looks like TZB. So I think we are good on that. But there is other aspect I think Brian was mentioning, which is there has to be like only one CPU for PromQL evaluation. Do you remember that? So can we make sure that even Prometheus can concurrently aggregate certain things per block, which will immediately improve, in my opinion, like even latency of Prometheus itself, but of course CPU usage will increase and so on. So at the end, maybe not matters much for Prometheus, but changes game for Thanos and Cortex immediately, right? So I wonder what's your thoughts, because if Prometheus will still keep constraint of like, we don't care about other, remote distributed PromQL use cases, we care about the solid Prometheus, which might be fair. I don't think there is a strong need for query planner, in my opinion. But maybe I'm biased.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of users either just asking questions or proposing something like in the issue, or then you see tricks like you can write this query in this other way to avoid that this is evaluated. Although I'm not even sure if that there are many cases like that, but it just feels wrong to not. I mean, it would be cool if this could be done in like in an incremental way, adding more tricks of one after another. But I think this probably needs a bit more, like some fundamental different infrastructure in the engine. But I'm also not an expert. I just would like to have this on the table. And if an expert tells me this is just all infeasible, okay, so then be it. But we should put it on the table first.
So do we see a world where our PromQL works well for singleton as well as for distributed case? That's a strong, essentially, goal or enablement I'm looking for. And let's kind of at some point agree yes or no, because I think, it would be super useful to reuse the same thing, because it's incredibly complex, engine, and I am not fully qualified to understand all the math points that are happening there, but I want to make sure it's optimized on the distributed system kind of manner, so we can map reduce those things. And I would love to provide a framework that those maybe more data passionate engineers can help in from their standpoint, and the storage level engineers like me can help on this standpoint, so we can join. And I wonder if this is a possibility here.
So like one example I have is like I have like every series, like you'll do a query with multiple series, and every series is doing a request to a different service, basically. And I would love to do all of those in parallel for a query and return, because otherwise you just go do this, and like queries are way, way higher latency than they should be or need to be. So I would love to see that, because I don't want to rewrite PromQL or something like that.
So from my point of view, I'm thinking more about the sharding, right? Technology, tactic. We already split queries per day or per hour, but it's very manual. And ideally, this is dynamic, right? That would be amazing. And then now we also want to shard per series, which means probably sharding per block. That would be nice. So all of this is really relevant to Prometheus. It will benefit Prometheus as well, in my opinion, just probably much lower percentage of the performance, and of course it will increase complexity and maintenance, but again, we use the same stuff.
It would probably benefit Prometheus, but it is dangerous too. Like if you have queries that could like suddenly instantly use every core of a machine, it's going to slow down the ingest path and things like that. we
But
don't really
then-
have a
but then you
block on
limit that.
concurrent queries right now anyway. Well, I guess we have a 20. I think we have 20 block on the default number of
Yeah,
concurrent
yeah,
queries we
something
can
like that.
have. So there is some like intricacies around there, I think.
But you can limit all those things. I wouldn't be worried about that too much. So you can say, yeah, only 4 or 5 threads are allowed, or like Go routines, for example.
Yeah, I think that the max concurrency that we have in Prometheus, which is 20, should then apply for part of queries, but then you have the risk that some queries would still prevent other ones to run. So yeah, we would need maybe a limit for each query, how much you want to do in parallel. That would be something. To answer your first question, Chris, I think that we have implemented concurrent select for remote reads. No, it should be the case.
It's not with yeah, my case isn't with remote read.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
with like I'm using PromQL directly in this use
Okay.
case.
Because we should, well, in Prometheus should do the remote read calls in parallel nowadays.
Yeah. Yes, I've seen that. I wouldn't be opposed, like as long as we keep having that limit of threads, workers, whatever, I would be okay splitting that out. Like if we say, yes, you can use 20 cores of your machine for querying, and there's not that much queries going on right now, like it would be great to use that capacity.
I wonder if you can start forming some, I don't know, slow consensus points. So first of all, like, do we even want to address this distributed kind of problem inside PromQL engine? And second points would be, and definitely something around those limits. But I'm looking forward into, are we happy to consider some form of sharding inside PromQL? So no longer Cortex sharding is only like special thing above querier, and then our query pushdown on Thanos is also not like something above that has to work around PromQL, but actually is built in. And I wonder if we want to even think about those things, because right now this is very simplified view, but PromQL asks and takes from the storage the whole series from very beginning to end, and then switch to another series from very beginning to end. And this is very kind of simple to think about, but like it poses some scalability limits.
I want to solve it in PromQL itself, and I also want to maybe see if Chronosphere also wants to contribute to that effort, because I think they also use the PromQL package. So yeah, I think we should have a reference implementation for that inside Prometheus, and we should just make sure that it does not have negative impact in Prometheus, that we can still have some fast pass if we are only using TSDB, if that's possible. But I think we need to solve that issue, and I think if we want to be able to scale Prometheus and to scale the story about querying Prometheus at scale, we have to solve this issue.
I would say this is a little like it's related to query planning, but should we try and get a consensus for query planning first?
Yeah, I mean, query planning also has this aspect of just looking at the query and realizing you don't need to do everything, which would benefit all levels, right? That would also benefit implicitly all the other remote, distributed, whatever system, because it just creates less work.
Yes.
Right. So there are consensus points how we can split this like query planning, and I need Richie to do the proper namings and sentences, but query planning, and then we talk about distributed PromQL, and then we discussed maybe sharding inside PromQL. I would say those are kind of high level. And remote read implementation, sure.
Just waiting for this to settle. And also, sorry, I realize my head is completely somewhere else at the moment. I'm not doing a good job of the consensus.
Who is the most qualified person about this topic? This person should formulate the consensus points. And then this person can trick in all kind of weird things that we amateurs wouldn't notice what we are signing up.
I think
That's of all tricks.
I think, yeah, there is no one here who will say, I know everything about this and I'm super sure I don't miss any problem. But I don't think that should stop us. We should be collaborating on this, yeah.
No, and I mean, this, we are not deciding how it should look like in the end. We are deciding we will think about it, and if insights come out of it that certain parts aren't feasible or they would require certain trade-offs, then of course those get discussed. Like, we don't have to decide what the trade-off will be right here. Essentially what I said in the beginning, it would, I think, already help to have a line in our design dog list, so I can, if I meet a person who is actually very qualified in this, I can tell them, if you like a job, here is something interesting.
I would love to start some design doc with someone for sure. I'd happy to drive some of it.
I have to drop in 3 minutes. So I'm just looking at it. Nothing looks as if I would not consent so far.
Yeah, we'll do it in a second. Just waiting for stuff to settle. Darshan, let me share this. There you can see how it's currently written, and now we can do the call for consensus. So, consensus, Gautam, your name is too long. If you click into the consensus every time I read the consensus, I cannot read the consensus. Thank you. Consensus. We want to explore query planning in a design document, considering both the local and remote use case. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very good. Remote read implementations will be expected to return series that match the given select labels before remote write is considered stable.
Remote read.
Yes, before remote read is considered stable.
So it feels like it should be about the spec and not the implementations. Like, we can't just sit around and wait for them to change their implementation if it's not meeting this.
Yeah,
right?
but a spec expects
Yeah,
implementation.
we change our expectations. If they meet the expectation is a different question.
Yeah.
I still think Callum has a valid point. I was also mentally stuck on if we should just have a version before we change stuff, so we have something which has a name, even though it was experimental. If we give it a number or a name, we can still simply drop it, but we can talk more precisely about the thing versus, well, it was that type, now it's that type.
So do we have anywhere right now written this rule that you can return any labels, any on documentation comments? I've never seen that.
I don't think we do, but I also don't think there's huge harm in just saying, hey, we are making this explicit, so whatever with the undefined behavior, it's now a version, and that version is already deprecated, and we have a new version, and that is more specific and not undefined and done.
Okay.
I mean, if we already know we want to go in the, like, if this consensus passes, we could also just not, we don't have to have that unspecified behavior if we already know we're going in the direction of we want this
Now,
to be
see you in
specified.
30 minutes.
See you, Bjorn.
Yeah, the question is if we should at the same time just bless and deprecate the undefined behavior, so it's easier to talk about the new behavior because we can say that was version 1 and now we have version 2 or what have you. By giving things a name, it's easier to talk about them because I find it's often very confusing, in particular if talking to other people. Because for them, it's just a thing which changes or maybe not changes. Okay,
I would propose that the current version is 0.1. We will move to 0.2. And then when we will know what we want to do with the distributed use case, we can work on 0.3 or 1.0, which will include more maybe ints or that kind of things in the protocol.
So you're saying we give the old thing a name and we don't yet decide how the new thing should look like?
There should be an intermediate step which will enable us to improve from queries, which will be 0.2, but let's not make it a 1.0 because query sharding will probably require updates in the protocol itself. So let's make the one with query sharding 1.0.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. I think we should stay within
0.x.
Yep. Thank you. Again, my brain is somewhere else. Okay. So let's try this. Also, I need to mark the other thing as green. Consensus. The current remote write specification versus 1.0.1 with undefined select series matching behavior will be deprecated. Once we know how the future behavior should look like, or should.
So this consensus statement would not unblock. Does this unblock, like there is an issue or a pull request, I forget where we were having this conversation, that is blocked on this behavior right now? Would that?
That's
Yes,
the
but-
thing, like, that's the next consensus step. Bartek, I think, was it who requested minimal steps of consensus, so I'm trying to build this layer cake.
Okay, as long as there's going to be a consensus step that unblocks that we can vote on, I'm okay with this.
Okay. So all agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very good. We will actively consensus. We will actively experiment with the new behavior with the intention to release this as 0.2 for remote read.
Should we define the new behavior? Which
Sure.
is just the next bullet point.
Yeah, we just maybe do implementations. Will be expect to return series for remote read 0.2 or something.
Consensus. We will actively experiment with the new behavior, expecting to return series that match given select labels with the intention to release this as 0.2 for remote read. That sentence is broken, but it's not wrong. Agreed? Anyone disagreeing? We want to explore consensus. We want to explore how to make the PromQL engine more efficient in distributed use cases, including sharding. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Good. Nice. So let's see what's next.
I have an English question. In the third point, we said expecting to return series that match the given labels. Does it mean that it is fine to return series which does not match? Because it did not say only matches these labels. Just curious.
If it was a written specification, you would be right that it's not suitably defined. As a writing of human intention, I think it's fine. Because as we have a consensus that we expect something to happen, that's a strong movement in that direction. But it's not binding. For a specification, it would be too weak.
Yeah, I think if Kutam just want to add only, we can add only in the sentence. Ganesh, sorry.
Fine by me. I don't. Then let's rerun the consensus. Just a moment. I'm just unmarking. Okay. Consensus. We will actively experiment with the new behavior, expecting it to only return series that match the given select labels with the intention to release this as a 0.2 for remote read. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Good. Let's see who's here. Package. We're going into old topics again. So there's still no update by 6 security. Of course, I'm stumbling across this now. Package management, dep, RPM, etc. We have Ben, we have myself, and we have Julian, so we can discuss it. Question is, what do we want to discuss? Is anyone actively volunteering to redo the things and look at how we do things?
So it's been on my to-do list to experiment with Go Releaser as a replacement for Prometheus, since theoretically, I think we have everything in place to actually do CGO builds now, which was, I think, the major blocker. I think we have an up-to-date enough Go Releaser that's in the Golang builder. We just need to switch over some of our pipelines to use the Golang builder instead of the standard Golang image in CircleCI. I just haven't had a chance to play with it in the repos.
I mean, if you get the chance, we can just say Ben does it. And
I have all next week off.
I don't
so-
think. I mean, is there something?
Okay, best way to spend my vacation.
Fair. So, I mean, as long as you don't burn out and such, please. The question is there something to discuss, or as long as Ben just wants to do it?
From what I see, just the co-releaser will probably maintain more work from the individual maintainers of the libraries, because in Promio we can make a lot of assumption in the Promio repository, but in Go Releaser we will probably need to be more explicit in each one of the repositories about the Go Releaser configuration. So that will put a bit more work on everyone over time, I think. Like adding a new architecture might require work for everyone, or we would need to find a way to sync YAML scripts.
Well, we have lots of tools for syncing our YAML configs. We can just sync the Go releaser config file.
Okay.
also the parallelization stuff we added in. Did we add that some of that to Promu? I don't know if that's in Go Releaser.
The question is, Julian, do you have active concerns about the ongoing workload and toil, or is
No.
it, like, is it a note or is it a concern?
It is just a note. I am also wondering if Ben is planning to explore signing releases now, because I think that Go Releaser now can auto sign releases with GitHub Actions with the GitHub keys, which could be interesting. But then we would need to move out of Circle CI to go to GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
That
But
also might be something we can inject with Circle CI context. So we
okay.
can include the key material needed to do signing into the Circle CI. We already have a context that contains all of our publishing secret keys, so just add another environment variable that contains that.
Speaking of signing, age is becoming better and better. The question is if at some point we drop GPG completely for everything.
The Go Releaser is using cosign. So cosign is the Linux Foundation thing. /cosign is what's used, and it seems to be the latest trick to sign releases.
Go sign or co-sign?
COS. I will put it in the design doc.
Ah, Sigstore, okay. Yeah, also fine. There are very few things which are likely to be as long-term painful as GPG. Oh, this is publicly recorded. Someone will come after me. Yeah, okay, but that basically means there's no concerns, so we can just run a consensus for Ben to do it. Just a moment. Okay, consensus. Ben wants to do it by EOE 2021. We are looking forward to it. Agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Ben? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, Google Forms security handling. Maybe if it takes long enough, we can simply skip it. Of course, we have age. Frederick is not in the call, but we can talk about renaming Alert Manager potentially. Yeah, it's the highest rated. I would be more comfortable if Frederick and or Julius were in the call, but so that's another one from the really, really, really old backlog. Way back in time. my argument was that the naming of Alert Manager is really bad. It's a confusing name, and it just confuses people. And even within Prometheus team, we see this confusion again and again. Even when Ganesh and I talked about testing alerts and such, we got super confused about what we actually mean until we started using new words and like alert generator and all those things which are now in the compliance suite. Yeah. On the other hand, it's been a year since this topic has been on the backlog, and the name Alert Manager just becomes more and more well known. So arguably, the ship has sailed to rename it. But I still very much dislike the name, and there would be others which would be way nicer, like for example, Alert Router, or Notification Router, or Promulator, or something. Yet, probably the ship has sailed. Thoughts?
Naming is hard. That's my fault.
Yes, I also see confusion from customers because they say Alert Manager for the Cortex Alert Manager and that kind of thing. So
One thing which we could try is we could try and have, like, if we decide we want to explore a new name, we can try and have a survey or something, and try and collate feedback from different venues. I'm torn. Like I still think the name is bad and might be a liability. On the other hand, it's so well established. We have 12 people on this call. There must be more opinions.
I mean, let's do data gathering, voting, or forum, or any of this. Other than that, I don't think we can decide easily.
Yep, I would agree. Let's kind of vote. Having said that, I think it might be too late now, but I want to get some data.
It wouldn't be so bad to rename it to Alert Router. It's not so much different, I guess, but yeah.
I mean, if we only slightly rename it, and I mean, I think, the one who suggested those three ideas. To argue against my own idea, if we only make a slight change, is it even worth it? On the other hand, if it's so much more precise,
Why it's not great? Got them.
I don't know. It just feels like Alert Manager.
Yeah.
we just need someone to expand the usability of Alert Manager into everything which you actually need to do alerting. And
Well, so is the current problem that like people expect, like it seems like that people expect Alert Manager to be where you define alerts, where like alerts are evaluated, all of those things, right? Like router, like to me addresses that some. Like it's like we're routing alerts here. We're not managing them, just routing. So like
Yeah.
it definitely seems like a step in the correct direction, while still keeping some old context.
We convinced Gotham now. We're good.
Yeah. I don't have crazy strong feelings here, so.
Anyway, voting, data.
yeah. Consensus. We don't like the name, but we are not certain the pain of a rename is worth it. We will try to collect data from our users and the wider community. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very nice. So we have a ton of things which all have 2 votes. Björn isn't returned, so this does not. It's mainly Björn and I voting for stuff. Prometheus parser tolerates invalid open metrics exposition. See issue. Definition Particle voting for it, so. Julian, do you want to do a quick intro into the thing, or should I do it?
I can do an introduction. So basically, in Prometheus, we are able to scrape open metrics and we are able to scrape Prometheus text format. And currently, we are able to pass any kind of open metrics valid syntax, but we only reject some of the invalid cases of open metrics because we expect the client to be open metrics compatible and not issue those bad metrics in the first place. And then we have like the open telemetry collector, which tries to be open metrics compatible, and we say, yeah, but even Prometheus does not reject those bad use cases when scraping. So the question is, and do we want to enforce open metrics compatible solutions to reject scraping those bad use cases? Or do we want to just enforce that on the client side, that if you emit open metrics, we expect you to only emit correct metrics? The reason we don't do that in Prometheus is mainly performance reasons for one part, so that some of them would actually ask us to retain a state between when we scrape some data. So currently we really parse line by line, and every line is more or less independent from the others. And the other reason is, well, we want to still be able to scrape millions of metrics, and every check like that will slow that scrape in that ingestion. So that's basically it. What should we do? Should we decide that what Prometheus is doing is right and then not enforce like the bad use cases when scraping? Or should we enforce that and then we also need to align Prometheus and possibly having a performance impact?
My 2 thoughts here are that from an ecosystem point of view, just going to the fundamental of IETF, be strict in what you send out and be somewhat more lenient in what you accept. So there is a good argument to be made that optimizations can be made and are valid. Also, from an ecosystem point of view, we need to make really certain that it's clear what is mandated and what is not mandated. So we really have a level playing field. So anything which Prometheus does or does not do also needs to be basically needs to be reflected in the test suite. It doesn't matter. Third point, with my open metrics hat on, we already did talk about this a little bit, and basically splitting out things more in should, must, may, which are already in must, should, may, or most of them are already in there. But also to basically just provide lists of which fall into which class. So anything which is a must would need to be checked. Anything which is a should be checked. Blah 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 blah. Like discern between error, warning, and information. So that's the initial working thinking. Last point. as OpenMetrics was founded to closely mirror what Prometheus does, if push came to shove, I think that Prometheus decides how it wants to do stuff, and the rest needs to align with how Prometheus decides to do stuff.
Yeah, so it feels like a gap in the OpenMetrics spec that it doesn't allow a scraper to be more lenient, right, and like more tolerant. Because why not? Like why we cannot just Is that what you
Maybe some-
propose, Richard, to
Not
change?
quite. There is we have tons of tests in OpenMetrics, and ages ago I made a complete list of all the tests. So you had a canonical list of tests which you could just run against, and we define various valid and invalid tests. And this is just a flat list without any other additional information or context. It's literally just this is valid, this is invalid. So taking a maximalistic interpretation, you must reject anything which is invalid in the test suite. But that is basically me being a doofus and just creating this one flat list and not taking into consideration what is a must, what is a should, what is a may. Because just because it is invalid exposition under OpenMetrics does not mean that it must be rejected.
Okay, but it's not specified on OpenMetrics, right? What should be, what's must at this point now.
There is to some extent, but it's clearly not enough, and it's basically a gap.
Like, my thoughts here are that Prometheus server itself doesn't need to be perfectly validating that an endpoint that it's configured to scrape is OpenMetrics. Like, I would prefer the better performance. We could add a strict mode if someone wants that. Could be an option, but like a lot of most targets are somewhat trusted, and like there's other toolings. There's, I believe, client Python parser is the canonical reference implementation. Like we could make a test that like you can test that your output is correct. Great, Prometheus will be able to successfully go and scrape it. I want those performance optimizations to at least be possible, regardless of what we do.
And I also want to add that to use the OpenMetrics parser, you actually need to change the header. And a lot of people will just continue to use the text format anyway. So I would expect that if you expose OpenMetrics, you really have an OpenMetrics designed exposition library. It's not like you will create a text file for the node exporter collector and then decide that no, it is an OpenMetrics thing. I think it will really be something that you will need to explicitly enable. So I don't think we need to validate everything in Prometheus itself, because I expect that this will be done by specialized libraries anyway.
Yeah, both of those points basically go to the same thing of how TCP/IP was initially designed by John Bostel et al. Where you are super strict in what you send out, but you are way more lenient in what you accept. And I think there is a good argument to be made that this is how it should be treated across the wider ecosystem. It also means that there's a certain amount of resiliency built into the whole ecosystem as the tests for exposing are harsher than the requirements for failing a scrape.
Yeah. Like, as I said, like I would be okay with if someone wanted to contribute it, adding a strict mode to Prometheus that knowingly, and it could be done in a reasonable way that isn't just a ton of complexity. But like we could have a strict mode where you have to pass, and if that's helpful for many people, I'd be okay with that. But kind of TBD on what that implementation looks like.
Okay. Do we need a call for consensus? I mean, yeah, maybe we should. Maybe we should have at least the call. Yeah, let's try. In just a moment, I'll just write it.
Yes, I think we need a consensus that for to clarify what it means for the confirmance admin, at least.
Okay. That's what I'm
Yeah, and it'd be good to have, hey, we discussed this in the dev summit. Like we discussed this in the dev summit. These are our thoughts. We would like to at least keep the performance. If that is the case.
I just
Okay, I have to drop, but I think people know my opinions here.
Oh.
Might be back later, but yeah, see.
I also
you.
have to drop for a bit.
Yeah. Do we still have something approaching quorum? Hey, Jan. Consensus. As per RFC 769 Postle's law, be conservative in what you do, be liberal in what you accept from others. We will make certain that the compliance tests treat all implementations in the same way and fairly. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
I think that, well, that it can be interpreted in different ways. I think that we should still run some tests which are like which do not cost much like we have today. We should not be too liberal either.
I don't think it's a consensus which forces us to be liberal. It's just something which opens up a certain maneuvering space,
Okay.
as long as it's fair and transparent for everyone.
Okay.
I mean, that's the kind of thing which at some point with a new WG compliance would also be quite nice to just basically come up with a proposal and then discuss this on the mailing list or in a dev summit or something where we can then find consensus on the specific suggestion. Okay, so all agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Should we revert wordsmith? Perfect. Too many tabs. So we don't have Björn here. We can discuss the X-rate design doc. So to summarize Björn's stance, I mean, I'm speaking for him to some extent here, but I think it's a fair summary. Good initiative needs more wordsmithing and careful consideration to come up with the best implementation or suggestion.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I wonder, yeah, like, can we give him meaningful, specific feedback that will go towards essentially? But I think Bjorn already kind of commented on a couple of stuff, but yeah, I think we are in a good direction. So So I wonder what's the consensus we want to make on this. Do we even ever want it? That, I guess that's the consensus we might want to have.
I believed and still believe that it is a valid suggestion, and we are not doing our users a favor by not offering it, because there is clear need, and it doesn't make sense to not offer it. At the same time, I do agree that it needs careful consideration, in particular how corner cases and such can be treated or should be treated. As such, I think we can do the thing which we commonly do with design docs, where we simply open it up for anyone to participate. Maybe we should try and have someone who volunteers for shepherding the proposal until it's in a form where we can actively make a conscious decision. Open parentheses. I get the feeling that this is something which we may need to introduce for team external design documents anyway, where we basically have a sponsor or shepherd or something from Prometheus team to just apply what Prometheus team thinking is and just help people, because it's also kind of bad if we encourage people to create design documents and then don't mentor them. Like, it's the same as with code, basically. So everyone is falling over themselves, volunteering to mentor / shepherd. The way Bartek is grinning, he's about to say yes.
No, I'm doing query planning.
Okay.
I want to focus on that, to be honest. But I definitely will help reviewing and giving thoughts, but I don't want to lead this.
I know Björn will not have the time. He would be nice to have. We can ask Julius if he's motivated. So we just make a call for consensus that we force Julius to do the work.
That's what you do when someone is not present.
Consensus. We like the intention and we'll try to find a mentor within Prometheus team to help the design document take shape. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? I also realize we only are 6 people from team on this call with the amount of people who dropped. Okay. We're on the really long-term tail of the backlog. So if anyone of the people in here want to bring something up, feel more than welcome to. And else I'll farm backlog. Alert manager custom body template. Didn't we discuss this? Am I misremembering? Yeah, we did discuss it in a merged alert manager custom webhooks / body template. Sorry, I forgot to mark this. No, those are two. So Julian, do you want to also talk about Alert Manager custom body template? Because you raised both Alert Manager custom webhooks / body template and the other. Or
I did split it in two, but I do not remember that we discussed that last time.
Second to last time, it was during Dev Summit 9 in September. Either way, do you want to discuss Alert Manager custom body templates as a distinct topic, or do you consider it already discussed?
So the consensus on the 9th Dev Summit is that we will split that and discuss at the next summit.
You're right. So that would make sense why it wasn't marked. Huh. Imagine if I wasn't stupid. Good, Bahamas. So Alert Manager custom body template. Over to you, Julian.
Yes, so a lot of people want to customize the Alert Manager body of the webhook, and there are multiple solutions on the table. I think one solution is from Ben to be able to add extra fields in the webhook that you can template as you wish. And the other proposal is to just let users find a way to just customize a complete webhook, so you would not even have the schema of the Alert Manager. And I don't know what we could use or do there to enable that use case. For the webhook, I would be against using Go templating anyway, because doing JSON in Go templating would be not great. But we could explore JSON editor queue maybe. That seems to come back a few times. But then we would still be restricted to JSON APIs anyway, and to the semantics of, we might also need extra parameters like which return code do we find to be okay or not okay. So in general, I think that we should just allow that, but I don't know how we should do that.
I think I agree that we should allow it. Hey, Björn. Just to jump back for a second, we just touched on the design doc super quickly. Sorry, on the X-Rate design doc, with basically a consensus of we like the intention and we'll try to find a mentor within Prometheus team to help the design document take shape. Good. So yeah, Julian, I agree. I also would like to have some templating thing. I don't have opinions on what a nice templating thing is. No one has any opinions on this?
I think we should allow templating. That's the only opinion.
Jan, you're muted. I saw your microphone. No, it's...
Yeah, sorry, just noticed that. I don't have a particular opinion, but I would be happy to kind of compile alternatives that would be possible, so we can talk about a more informed decision.
Okay. Should we?
I think that this does not really need a design doc, that we could work out of one or two pull requests to see what it would give. I don't think we need a full design document for this.
The question is, do we even need a consensus on this? It
No, we
seems
can
clear-
we can move to the second part.
Okay.
The second part is an idea from Ben that Prometheus could query external tools, for example, Grafana, and maybe attach to the alert an image or that kind of things. Instead of just sending like plain text, you would have like your Grafana rendering in your email or in your alert on Slack.
I think we touched on this in the second to last Dev Summit. I like the idea of pulling external resources if it's done in an extremely resilient way, which always defaults to quickly alerting if whatever resource cannot be pulled from or queried or what have you. So it in my opinion must not be in the critical path, but beyond this sounds useful.
I actually have that in one of the webbook receivers for my customer, and what we do is that we post the alert first, and then we edit the original alert once we have the dashboards.
No. I think gut feeling we need a consensus here, just because it's something which could be an impact if done wrongly.
I think for this one we will need a design document as well, because of how we will query the external sources, which kind of external sources we want to allow, and the resilience issue, that kind of things. I think this one would require a design doc.
Consensus. We are open to exploring this idea in a design document. The critical path of alerting must not be made less reliable and only slightly slower at worst. Wait, let me rewrite. First, the critical path of alerting must not be made less reliable and only slightly slower. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Björn, you're muted.
I felt it was better with the critical path of alerting must not be made less relevant and only slightly
Okay.
lower at worst. I like them all. I don't know if others.
It sounds a little bit German writing it this way around, but I honestly don't care. I undid the change.
I mean, the critical path must not be made less reliable. That's a universal statement. It's not only the worst case. It's like even in the best case, it must not be made less reliable. Like
fair, but even in the worst case, it must not impact.
Yeah, but I would.
Okay.
This reads fine for me, but we have native speakers here. If you disagree, I will totally believe you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. Reliability and performance are separate things. So
Do you think we did it at the beginning or at the end?
Is it good at is or would you revert?
I think it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so let me reread just to make certain consensus. We are open to exploring this idea in a design document. The critical path of alerting must not be made less reliable and only slightly slower at worst. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very nice. We're too quick. Okay, I know how we spent. Oh, does anyone do? Should we have a break? I just realized. No.
I'm fine.
I had to break by doing another event, which was not really a break.
I'm fine with outbreaks, so I need your decision/guidance if you want to have a break or not.
I would love a break, but I'm not sure if then we could have 10 minutes break and then another hour perhaps that makes sense.
Do we expect anyone else from team to come back? I don't remember what they said they were going to or not.
They said maybe. Okay, anyone who wants a break, raise your hand.
Oh, okay. I thought it's just me. Do we even Gotham?
Okay.
Gotham is also sick, so
And
let's have an 8-minute break so we
let's
Okay.
let's meet on the half hour.
yeah, which is not the half hour in India.
Yes, on the full hour in India, on the half hour in the rest of the world. See you in 8.
Everybody's taking a break.
Still 30 seconds.
We still have 10 seconds.
And Ben is back from doing the Go releaser stuff, so I guess we can review the pull request.
No, I'm just back from other meetings.
What? Where were we? So just to set a little bit of fire at the end. Matrix values as string. Julian.
Me?
You.
Why is dependabot
Okay.
giving me security alerts? The files
Sorry?
don't exist. Sorry, just complaining.
So a user is asking to have string as value instead of floats. And I think I wanted to get more opinions on that than just mine, so I put this in the agenda. I don't have more context for the user, but the issue is quite long, so you can read the issue if you want. But basically, I think they want to have just use value, just how the monitoring system would do that. That they are thinking mostly about the enumeration use case. Currently in Prometheus, you have 5 or 6 different metrics with only one with a value of 1, and they want to optimize that use case from what I read in the issue. And Björn says that he would like to have that, if I read correctly, that numbers are label values.
Yeah, so I
What do you
find
mean?
myself, I mean, you had this number of times where the label value is actually a number, and then people struggle because it's sorted as a string, it's parsed as a string. Now we have, of course, we did this like for humanize something that also works as a string value. I mean, my gut feeling is probably we shouldn't even touch this topic, but we should definitely discuss it, right? Just wanted to say that I find myself more often thinking about label values as numbers than metric values as strings, if that makes sense. But I think it both might have a use case, only one of them. Please discuss.
I have several use cases for both, and I strongly believe we shouldn't do either.
Yeah, that's kind of where I also ended up. Callum's giving us a tour.
I mean, for example, for histograms and such, like maybe not for the high resolution ones, it would just make sense to have those in like treat them as real numbers in the labels.
But if we have like a richer value type, this is the irony, right? If we have a richer value type, like with the histograms now, we might have the same for summaries, then we don't need pseudo labels anymore for quanta numbers or pocket boundaries. So we have circumvented that one. But if we have richer value types, we could also argue then we should also have a string value type now that we are on it. It would definitely, once we are struggling with that right now in coding the histogram stuff, we just add the histogram thing to everything, but it could also be a thought if you should have some more generic representation of the value in TSTB. And once we have that, it would be easy to add a string. But right now, it would just be very awkward and would have very little use, I think.
I don't see any reason to change our data model, except for the sparse histogram format.
Yeah, I mean, I see this histogram could open options for the future to rethink this, but I wouldn't start a complete rethinking of the data model with the reason that we want strings as values.
Supporting enums in a better way would be nice. We talked about this at length in the open metrics standard, because there are not they're not different metrics. They're just they're still separate metrics, but they're just a bunch of bit flags on different metrics. And being able to optimize that in a time series database would be useful in terms of duplication of this label name is part of a set, and so you can optimize that. But at the end of the day, they're still separate metrics with just Boolean values, and improving our indexing to handle that is probably better. So like, I don't see, even in Prometheus, I don't see a reason to change the handling of enums, because it's just things that we can optimize in our storage anyway.
I mean,
so I'm reading through this issue, and it's like, this is like, all of these things that they're talking about sound like this is just labels, and they just don't want to repeat labels. And well, that's not how we can do things.
I think it would be attractive to have all the metric types in open metrics natively represented in Prometheus, but yeah, that would include what is it called? The enum, is it called the enum data type?
So bit set.
Bit set, yeah. But that would not be precisely the same as having values that are strings. It would be, perhaps it would solve some of the use cases where people need that.
Yeah, we already support string type metrics. They're called labels.
In a way, yeah. So perhaps this is when I said we probably should do neither. We just mix up things, and that's probably not leading to anything good. Better keep them separate. I don't know. So, I mean, it feels like nobody in the room has a strong appetite of doing anything concrete in this direction. But the room is also pretty small right now. Just 7 people.
I also know that the presented use case apparently only has a cardinality of 2.
So it would be an enum.
Like I said, I read over the issue, and I'm like, that's a label. Just include the label. You don't need string metrics to handle this. You have labels. That's what they're for.
Okay.
We're looking at a bunch of stuff where we have RPCs that have, like gRPC has a series of status codes that are not, the same as the HTTP status codes, which are numeric. It actually has string status codes. So we just include those status codes as metrics. And when to optimize, we have recording rules and storage and better indexing. So what they're talking about, there's no need for it. We already have that as labels.
Okay, so the consensus is to not do anything about it for now, but I think we should make clear that we are a room of 7 people and that this shouldn't preclude anyone from making a good case in the future. I guess anything. I like. Did I phrase that when we state anything? It's stating the state of the present, but doesn't prevent us from changing our mind in the future.
Yeah, it seems like we're open to use cases other than just like enums or to like build infometrics where you're not really getting a whole lot of value. You're just complaining about the fact that the value you actually want isn't a label. But other use cases we would be interested in.
We could do we have a regular expression extractor for labels? Like that's a common, like, I just need to munge something that is coming from something I can't control. And so, like, for example, in the SNMP exporter, we have metrics that are coming in as strings, and there's a regular expression matcher that allows you to extract the numerical value from the label. And if we could do that at scrape time, that might actually solve some of these problems.
It's a common pain point, and if you look at, for example, Grafana, you have precisely functions which allow you to do this type of thing, where you can extract values from labels and then put them into variables. Historically, we have not done this, but also historically, I have always believed that being able to actually work with labels and extract values more easily would be a good use case. Open parentheses, it changes the context of what a reply by Prometheus would be. So we might need to find a new place in our JSON to put that stuff. But that
no, I'm suggesting we just add another feature to the metric relabel configs.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about through PromQL allow a way to extract label values. And then
we could have the same function. So like a regex extract like function, and it would replace the value returned with the value extracted from the label. So a metric relabel config option to munge at scrape time, and a PromQL feature to munge at.
Okay, but now you're talking about changing the value of the label, or changing the value label on the fly. I was just
it's just like rate. It would return a new metric with a different value. So rate takes a thing and returns a new value. So it's no different than rate. It would just be value extract or value regex. So like, let me type this into the doc. So you do like.
But unless I'm mistaken, we are talking about two different things here, or you were just talking about two different things. On the one hand, changing the value of a label, and on the other hand, returning the value of the label in the result set.
So Prometheus can return strings. So there is a result type, and if you type a quoted string in the query, you will get that quoted string back, but then you don't have any labels. And I don't think we should do that.
I will check that, because I was not aware that PromQL is doing this. It is fascinating. Why do we have this?
Okay, that's a question for Julius.
What? What?
But it is the same if you just type 5, you will get a type scalar and it will be 5.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, I know, and conceptually speaking, this is fine, and I've even used this in the past for various weird things, but yeah, so for the peanut gallery, I just queried double quote test, double quote, and it gives me back string test. Okay, so on the positive side, we already have something to return label values with. Fascinating. Okay, let's see what. Yeah, so Ben, what you're writing is not precisely the same, but similar to how Grafana does it for variables. I was talking about precisely this thing where you extract label values as part of the result set, and I do think there are valid use cases for this. Like, for example, a more generic way to extract label values. So maybe even Grafana could deprecate its own thing and just rely on PromQL built-ins. Yeah. As to on-the-fly rewriting, it smells like a foot gun, but I also don't strongly object. Like, it smells weird, but whatever.
But label rewriting is possible already, isn't it? Or what am I missing?
Not at query time?
Yes, there is a label
Yes.
replace function.
You have label replace, but if you try to use it like Grafana, Prometheus will complain because you return multiple times the same label. Grafana only wants the label values, even if there are multiple metrics behind it.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the question is, do we want to extract label values and return them as part of the result set? Or as their own distinct result set? The question becomes a little bit, what do we do with this? Do we allow people to use this as input for example, a PromQL query? They can write a complex query, selecting certain label values, and then use them as an input to a query which you've written. Like those kinds of, this kind of worms opens up. Thoughts?
I feel like I wanted this feature before, but I'm failing to remember specifics.
That's a pretty good summary.
I am also wondering if we should have a more generic version that would also parse the dates into timestamps, into the dates in labels into timestamps.
And vice versa.
That's an actual question. Well, vice versa. So you want to have a nice label name with the date, a nice label value with the date of inside the timestamp, which would
That
be
sounds good, like a good idea.
Yes, because we have a bunch of things like the last time you reload the Prometheus server, and then you need to copy paste 10 times to know when your Prometheus server have been reloaded really, or you need to use 10 functions like day of month of year, that kind of things.
Let's just a moment. Let's try and close the. Sorry for interrupting, but let's try and close the other thing. I'm rearranging temporarily in the meeting notes. Of course, for the initial thing, metric values as strings, and also for treating label values as real numbers, you can do math on. I think we have consensus that we do not want to do this. So to support. Consensus. We can see the use cases, but on balance, do not think the use cases are worth aim to support string type metrics or numeric label values. This consensus is not designed to close the discussion. It's just a point in time statement. Agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Okay. Of course, now we can mark the rest as a follow-on conversation. That copy and paste went wrong. There's some formatting in it. Shift Control V allows you to copy and paste without any formatting, but you need to delete the thing completely which you have in.
Should be fine now.
Yep. Okay. I mean, honestly, I would like to open up both those use cases where we can actually work on label values and where we can actually work on the results. Like we need to be, I think, careful in where this result set shows up in our default JSON structure to avoid breaking implementations which expect different things. So it would need to be super careful, and it might potentially be a breaking change. As such, I think it would need to be behind a feature flag.
Well, I think that we have better APIs for that, to be honest. We already have all the label values APIs that can be used for that, and they now take even matchers and that kind of things.
But wouldn't this still mean that, like, you still need to support this in PromQL and you still need to return the right thing if there's a PromQL query which has those, or are you saying those queries would be run against different endpoints?
Yeah, I don't think it should be in PromQL at all.
I mean, okay, so are we at the post-processing discussion again? Because if we are, just to look back, at some point we came out that post-processing is nice, but if you want to use this as an input, subquery, what have you, so you need to make it part of PromQL proper anyway, because it cannot be post-processing at that point.
Yes, but I think we don't speak about the same thing.
Okay.
So what are you speaking about?
I'm speaking about being able to, in the extreme case, for example, select a label value and use this as an input for a label value selector in a PromQL query. Like I currently cannot come up with a use case, but I'm also getting the feeling that there are valid use cases which this would enable.
So
Same,
this is possible today with vector matching.
I'm not certain it's possible in the generic case, but I'm also not certain.
So you can probably do that with label replace and vector matching just regularly in PromQL. Of course, you need a query planner for that to be efficient, but we are working on that. So
Mhm.
but if someone comes with an actual use case, we could think about it, but out of the blue, I think it's just possible in PromQL.
I failed to come up with a specific example. So then going to your suggestion of, for example, formatting timestamps, how would this look like? So you would say it's not part of a PromQL query?
This is part of a PromQL query. It adds a label to the result set with the formatted date.
It adds one or it replaces the old one?
It's not a label, it's the value then.
Yes. But would you have two values, one the numeric value and one the formatted date time? Or
Yes,
what?
the numeric value would be in, well, just the value of the metric, and then you would have just an extra label with the human readable date.
Couldn't this be a special case for label replace? We just have to, I mean, label replace already sort of does this. We just don't have a way of converting that timestamp.
Label replace in the past has been considered like the toolkit to do all kind of things on labels, even like copying labels, that kind of things, which could be done a lot easier with dedicated functions for users. So I don't want to overbloat label replace again with more features, because you can do anything with label replace. It's already confusing now.
Fair point, yeah. But I mean, the structure would be similar, I imagine.
Yeah, I've put an example in the design doc. Except that this does not take an input label. Because, and also this would not work on label replace, it will really work on the label, it will work from the value itself. And we have a lot of metrics in Prometheus with that value, like the last time you have sent a remote write sample, the last time we have reloaded the configuration, all that kind of things. When you need to debug that in Prometheus, it can be difficult.
We're pretty much at time, so I don't think we'll find a conclusion here, but I would suggest we put something in so we continue this discussion next time.
It might also be helpful to have more people in the room for that.
Yeah.
So do you want to put something there for next time, or should we just cut and paste this into the next agenda already?
Let's I'll do the honors and structure stuff. Okay, then thank you very much, and keep in mind that the next Dev Summit is also not on the last Thursday of the month, of course, Christmas and such.
Also, we are have almost cleaned out the agenda items. So at some point we can go back to a half-yearly in-person Dev Summits at conferences. Wow.
Pretty much. I mean, I think it was 1.5 years of monthly Dev Summits.
But also, like, I think this format has also advantages, right? So we should perhaps keep it at least at some cadence.
I think we should definitely keep it. The question is cadence and such, if at some point we run out of topics, but that would be a luxury problem. And also, hopefully at some point, it just means non-Prometheus team members toss more stuff at us.
Yep. No, pretty good.
Okay.
Then see you all in December.
See you. If you
Bye,
can get
everyone.
boosters, get vaccinated, and see you.
Bye.